you were never asked to be perfect when you showed up. You were just asked to be faithful.
Yes.
When we bury that talent, when we hide that talent, we risk forfeiting the good work that has been prepared for us in advance. Oliver Wendell Holmes said, most of us will go to our graves with our music still inside us unplayed. And that should scare us, right? Because we've been given this gift, this talent to get out into the world, and hiding it is not serving anyone.
Welcome to the Significant Women Podcast with Carol McLeod. Listen, I'm going to tell you a secret. Promise not to tell anybody, okay? I know you're not supposed to have favorites, but my interview with Mary Marantz is one of my favorite interviews I have ever done. She's articulate, she's warm, she's friendly, and her story is going to touch your heartstrings in a way that nothing else has in a long time. Now, Mary is a best-selling author, a speaker, and host of the Mary Marantz Show. But what makes her story so significant is how she overcame a childhood of abject poverty to go on to university, then to law school, and live the life that she's living today. Honestly, Mary Marantz's story could be made into a movie. It's so incredible. So, as we walk through Mary Marantz's journey today, you're going to be encouraged about your own life, that God will show up as you faithfully love Him and serve Him and commit your ways to Him. So grab a cup of coffee, a glass of iced tea, and lean in and listen to my conversation with Mary Marantz. Well, I'm here today with a brand new friend. I've admired her from a distance, just sort of watching what she's doing in the publishing world, on social media, her story, just all the things about her life. And I know that you are going to love listening to especially her testimony, her story. So my guest is Mary Marantz. Mary, welcome to the Significant Women Podcast.
Oh my gosh, Carol, thank you so much for having me. Just as we were talking before we hit record, you're sharing with me you're working on your 20th book. This is my third. So, I mean, gosh, 3 felt like a marathon and a half. So 20 is just totally like jaw-droppingly inspiring. And, you know, I think it's so appropriate and so on brand, for lack of a better phrase, for you to host something called Significant Women when I cannot even begin to imagine the ripple effects 20 books have made in this world. Like what a significant contribution and impact, ripple effects that you may never fully know. And we're probably going to talk about this later, but that is sort of this idea of significance is where the new book culminates. So we'll get to that later, but I just want to start by saying like, what an honor to get to sit down with you.
Oh, Mary, thank you. That is so sweet of you. We were chatting before I hit record and we talked about how the books of our childhood and how the authors that we admired from afar impacted our lives and spurred us on to love the written word. And of course, yours was Pearl S. Buck. I love the writings. Yeah. What a rich resource for any generation. And I shared with you how Laura Ingalls Wilder and of course, Louisa May Alcott and others have influenced me. But Mary, your backstory is so interesting. So I want to go all the way back to your childhood. And I want you to tell me what growing up was like in the hills of West Virginia.
Oh gosh, I always kind of like to start by saying, Carol, like it's kind of a miracle I survived. Not because like things were so terrible, just to be really clear right from the get-go in my home, but like kids just do not live like this anymore. Like we would be up and gone at sunrise and come back well after dark, ride our bikes 20 some miles away, rattlesnakes, stepping in, yellow jacket nests that they make on the ground sometimes. The trailer itself was pretty rough. It's very much like, I always kind of joke, like whatever stock photo you have in your head of, dilapidated single wide trailer in Appalachia, that is pretty much it. If you go to thebookdirt.com, that's my first book, you can see the cover is the actual trailer. The photo is the actual trailer I grew up in. I mean it when I say single wide. This is not a nice double wide with like a permanent foundation. And these things were just not built to last in the 1980s. So the ceiling starts to cave in and leak. I always say my people are the people who know what drywall ceiling looks like. This pregnant pause before it gives away in a downpour, the muddy water pours through. And the roof would leak, and cave in, which then meant that the floor got soggy and caved in. You had to know where to hopscotch. When I left my bedroom, there was a living room, and the whole trailer had brown shag carpeting except for the kitchen. And you had to kind of like know where to hopscotch so you didn't go all the way through to they were up on cinder blocks, so it was pretty far fall if you went through. And we had mushrooms growing out of the carpet at one point because it would get so soggy, and stray animals, just a revolving door of stray animals, none of which meant a very happy ending, which is not, a happy thing to hear, but it was the reality. And it's given me a big heart for animals to this very day. And so they would kind of go inside as much as they'd go outside. My dad's logging boots would track home mud. And so I would say you didn't know where the brown shag carpeting ended and dirt began. But as for me and my story, it always started with dirt. And so that's the couple of minute version long. We would, being children of the 80s who were basically feral cats, we would climb up on top of the trailer when it was raining and use it as the world's most painful slip and slide. The rivets every few feet. And so, yeah, I could unpack this for hours of like what growing up like that does, but I'm so grateful for the good that it gave me. I have such a work ethic, such grit, such resilience. And I feel like the childhoods that kids get these days, they're really missing out on that part. There's got to be some balance probably between rattlesnakes and yellow jacket nests and safe
Disney
parenting.
World. Yeah.
but not, yeah, exactly. But not forfeiting that, imagination and that grit and the resilience. Kids don't even get to be bored anymore.
Yeah.
So this is not an episode about kids or parenting or whatever, but it does inform a lot of what I do and how I do it.
So were you loved, Mary? Were you loved by your parents and grandparents and extended family?
The short answer is absolutely. The more nuanced, complicated answer is that they were loving me the best that they knew how. Mm-hmm. And that to them, who had much harder childhoods than I did, my dad went to work in the woods when he was 12. My mom didn't have running water when she was little. They didn't have indoor plumbing. They got one pair of shoes a year. Their Christmas dinner was like, government rice and cheese that somebody would drop off on their front doorstep. And so in their eyes, being in a brand new trailer, at least when we first got it, and getting a bunch of stuffed animals for Christmas. My mom worked at a department store called Ames, and she had layaway and, employee discount. And so we always had these really incredible Christmases. And so in their eyes, it was this huge, huge improvement. And it was really hard for them to ever understand, especially when I was beginning to write dirt, what the problem was. And so, now I live in New Haven, Connecticut. And if a child was living in a trailer that had every bug imaginable, roaches and ants and mice and snakes, and many, many, many times food would get left in the sink until there were baby flies, we'll just say. So, if that child were in those kind of conditions, like the world that I know now, that would be very unacceptable.
Right.
And so it's this tension, right? There's nuance when we tell stories that are not just black and white, but shades of gray. And so it's an absolutely, they loved me. My grandma Goldie lived right next door, and I was her everything, the sun and the moon and the stars. And they say if, one adult will take an interest in a child, that will change the trajectory of that child's entire life. And so I absolutely had that. My mom leaves when I'm 9 to go travel for her job working for Ames, but it was also kind of clear that was like a pretty permanent separation between her and my dad, but it also meant she left me. And then she would be home every other month. So it would be, she would just get used to her being back, and then she would leave again. Do I think that she didn't love me? Absolutely not. I think she, of course, loved me. I think in her mind, she was getting the health insurance. She was getting the money so we could have the nice Christmases or what have you. Her mom left her when she was 15. So that's what she knew. She left me when I was 9, to be clear. But I think that she thought she was doing the thing that would give me the things, and she thought I was really independent from a very young age and that I didn't actually need her. And so I don't think that she didn't love me, but I do think she was loving me the way that was all that she knew how.
Well, that's a beautiful way to describe it, Mary. It's a very generous and mature way to describe different aspects of your childhood. So you went to school, though, in the hills of West Virginia. Did you ride your bike? Did a bus pick you up? Tell us about your school years.
Yeah, we got picked up by a school bus at 5:30 in the morning.
Oh, my.
Total darkness, I still remember the buses have those blinking lights. Oh, actually, I remember when they added the blinking lights. So before that, there was just a big yellow, bomb barreling down the road. And we would go stand by the little bus stop and we'd all get on. And then we had to go down all the little country roads to pick up all the mountain kids, and they would bus us down into the town. So when I first started going to elementary school, it was New Hope Elementary School, which was in Fenwick. I grew up on the top of Fenwick Mountain. And Carol, that was one of these schoolhouses where it was so small that kindergarten and first shared a room. Third and fourth shared a room, fifth and sixth shared a room, second inexplicably got a room to themselves. And then we had one cafeteria, gymnasium, auditorium, the cafegimatorium. And so my dad had gone to that same grade school when he was little. And what had happened is that his first week of kindergarten, the teacher called on him. He didn't know the answer. All the kids laughed. And that is all that it took, Carol, that one experience for him to put the label on himself of stupid. Of dumb kid, not meant to do well in school. And he has continued to wear that label, even though he is incredibly intelligent. And so when I was starting kindergarten, here I am, I'm growing up in the same yard he grew up in because they parked the trailer just on the backyard of my grandparents' house. Going to the same Sunday school, about to start the same kindergarten, and he saw my life unfolding in a very similar trajectory that his had. And so he decided that the only thing he could do to intervene was to make sure that I was prepared as possible for kindergarten. And so at the time in the 80s, they would have these workbooks on the shelves right at the checkout at the registers in the grocery stores. And I can still see the cover of these workbooks. They were dot matrix printing where they would make the face of a little boy out of symbols like dollar signs and X's and exclamation points. And the idea was they had them in a reading track and a math track. You would get the workbook for the grade your child was about to start into. I'm sure it must have been some sort of, jumpstart government program or what have you, or something along those lines. But anyway, so we started with kindergarten. And then when I finished those workbooks, my dad brought home the first grade ones. And when I finished those, we went to second and then third. So that when I started kindergarten, I was at a sixth grade reading level and fifth grade math. And so just like he only needed one experience to be called, to feel stupid and label himself as stupid. When I started kindergarten that far ahead, they called me smart. And I wore that label and I rose up to that label. And so I say in Dirt, the labels we wear can become a lifeline or a lifelong curse.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and that is the way your dad loved you for sure, that he loved you out of the dumb label. He loved you enough to prepare you. What a beautiful story.
Yeah.
So you went to public school through all those years, probably the 80s and the early 90s. Yeah. And what were your dreams when you were a senior in high school? What were you thinking? What's next for me? I'm smart. Yeah. I'm stuck in West Virginia. How can I get out of here? What were you thinking?
Well, it's really interesting. There's 7 things that are coming to mind for me there, so I'm going to try to make sense of them. The interesting thing that becomes kind of the overhanging filter umbrella of this whole conversation to this question is that my dad was very insistent that I was going to get out, in the sense that I was going to get out of Fenwick Mountain and out of, the Richwood, West Virginia, for example. And that I was going to go to college. There was no question, no debating that. But to him, getting out was me going to West Virginia University. And so getting a little bit ahead of ourselves, which we'll probably come back to, when I started to apply to law schools out of state, he did not like it. He was not pleased about that. So there was, I think, at that point, so when I'm finish third grade, that tiny elementary closes down. They consolidate all of us and bring us down to Richwood, to Cherry River Elementary, and then Richwood Junior High, Richwood High School. And so I think there was a messaging of you're going to get out, but I don't think it was out of West Virginia yet at that point. I don't know that I ever even crossed my mind that I would get out of West Virginia until after college.
And where did you go to college first?
West Virginia.
Okay, so you went to West Virginia University.
That's right.
And was it always in your heart to go to law school?
Oh, great question. Yes is the answer. So first dream was to be an author. That's the first dream I ever remember having when I was 5 years old because of Pearl S. Buck, who wrote 87 books, by the way.
Oh.
So we need to get busy, basically.
We need to get going, sister.
And so it was author first. And I remember when we were in 7th grade, we took these aptitude tests that, get generally, and probably rightfully so, get a lot of, heat for not being accurate or whatever. But I got to tell you, my results were pretty accurate. It said I should either be an author, a lawyer, a teacher, a photographer, an interior designer, or like a counselor. And I have done like 5 of the 6 or whatever professionally. And the other 2 are like hobbies, So there you go. It was pretty spot on. So I would actually watch very shortly after wanting to be an author, like say 5, 6, 7, I would watch Perry Mason and Matlock and People's Court with my grandma Goldie.
Yes.
And I would go put on her little pink Sunday school suit and pretend it was my lawyer suit and say like, I object. And so that was there from a very young age. But then this is what happened. This is probably interesting for your people to listen to. We get older and we start to take in all of this data from the world and all of this like feedback from the world that says what's possible for people like you and what's not possible. And going to like the only law school in West Virginia is at West Virginia University. At least that was for sure when I was doing it. I think that's still true. And I was of the thought, because I didn't know anything about this stuff, that you went to the law school at the same place you did your undergrad. I didn't know you could switch. And so in my mind, like if I was ever going to be a lawyer, then I was going to have to go to West Virginia University. But I was terrified, Carol, to go to West Virginia University because they had 22,000 students. I still remember seeing the poster in my high school guidance counselor's office, 22,000 students. And if you brought everybody down from the mountain, the surrounding mountains, many mountains, and congregated us all in the one stoplight in Richwood, West Virginia, it would be about 2,000 people, 2,200 maybe. And so I truly believed, this is not hyperbole, I truly believed that if you start small, you stay small. Mm-hmm. That where you started determines how far you'll go. And I really honestly believed that because all the other students were going to be coming from like bigger places in West Virginia or even out of state. A lot of New Jersey people go because it's cheaper than in-state tuition for them, that I was going to be number 22,001 in terms of ranking, and that I was going to fail out, that if I went to a big school, I would fail out for sure. And so for my like junior year of high school, I pivoted and said, I am going to go to just the local community college and I'm going to get a teaching degree instead because I have a huge teacher's heart. And so I'm just going to do that. And I'm going to teach 3rd grade and that's going to be it. And I'm going to marry this really horrible boyfriend that I have in high school who's not very nice to me at all. And I'm going to try to buy a house with a real roof and that's going to be it. And then I watched a movie just as like the deadline for early acceptance to WVU was coming around. That was a really dumb movie. This should not be what inspired me, but it was like some Kramer from Seinfeld and Jeff Daniels had to like pretend. It was kind of like in the like My Cousin Vinny kind of range, which is a great movie. But they had to like pretend to be each other because there was some mishap, whatever. But that's all it took. Sometimes God will use really unexpected things to be like, hey, remember that dream? And so I, at the very last minute, only applied to WVU, and that's how I ended up there for undergrad. Because I was reminded that even if you're terrified, even if you're convinced you're going to fail, even if you believe where you start small, you stay small, if that dream will not let you go, if you're being reminded of it, even from the dumbest things or the most gripping things, we name the fear and do it anyway. And so I went for 4 years to WVU.
And then you had the audacity, the moxie to apply to a very prestigious law school.
Yeah.
So something must have been burning inside of you, Mary, that wouldn't let you go in order to have the courage to do that.
Mm. Yeah, I think that college very much for me became kind of a gateway, kind of the sort of transitional, a liminal space, as it were. So getting there was huge, and then when I'm there, I'm so afraid of failing that I I stumble into success. So like the first semester, I end up getting all A's, and then I'm like, okay, well, let's just see if we can keep that streak going, and I very quickly end up joining the debate team. And so we're traveling all over the Eastern Seaboard doing debates, and we're debating very global policy. So we're having to do deep dives and sanctions on these different countries, or aid to Africa, that sort of thing. Like we're really being in the affirmative and in the negative. And so I'm really learning on the page about a world outside of West Virginia. And even some of the trips that we took, they were the first times I went to those states,
Yeah.
First time I went to Florida was because of a debate tournament. And so I am taking global politics classes. I'm, learning to think critically in the classroom. And it just begins to open up what's possible. And it just begins to kind of make me go, all of these things that I have been told, do they have to be true? So, for example, some beliefs I for sure picked up growing up, sometimes implicitly, but oftentimes explicitly, was my dad saying there are good people and there are rich people, and the two are
wow.
rarely the same.
Oh my.
Or this is the way it is, this is the way it was, this is the way it always will be, right? Or, if you didn't struggle for it, you don't deserve it, which has made my relationship with grace really interesting,
Yeah.
So I start to unravel well, does this have to be true? Because I'm seeing this evidence to the contrary. Here's the Rotary Club of North Morgantown, which is where WVU is, giving me a $25,000 scholarship, a Rotary ambassadorial scholarship, to go spend a year in England, traveling around that country, being an ambassador for West Virginia and getting my master's while I'm there. And that's being funded by a bunch of people who wear ties to work and who have made more than enough that they can give it away. So now it's like these things are starting to happen, Carol, that challenged the worldviews that I'd, known for 18 years. So I start to kind of drift apart from him. And there's this really beautiful scene in Dirt where I talk about getting on the plane to go to England. And we were sort of like these two, ships drifting further apart, like an ocean of difference between our two worldviews. So that became really kind of like it sort of opened my eyes to this whole world outside of West Virginia in a really beautiful way, and what was possible. Now, being that this is all a work in progress, it is a process of naming the fear and moving forward anyway. I had really good grades, all A's, but 1 B plus, which I'm still mad about 20 years later.
What class was it in, Mary?
That was the thing that really burns, Carol, is I was killing myself the first semester, really stressing myself out. And so I just toned it down a little bit in the second semester. And there was a class that was actually pretty easy. And she was really she was not a very intense professor. And so I kind of used that to chill in that class so that I could work on the classes that were harder. And I ended up getting the B plus in the easy class. I was so mad. But it was fine because we either get to rise up when we meet disappointment and continue the streak, or we get to say, oh, well, it's ruined now. Forget it.
Yeah.
So I chose the first one. And so I got A's the rest of the time. And I had really good LSAT scores. And I, at the time when I was sending out the applications, my dream school was Georgetown. My reach school was Georgetown. And then I had some, other law schools that were in Virginia and what have you, still pretty, I wasn't going too far, it's DC, Virginia, Maryland, we're just sort of looking in this area. And then we started to look a little further afield. And the thing is that at the time, that at least as far as I know, there were not these scholarships where they'll waive tuition, not tuition, but application fees. So every school I'm applying to is $100, and that's here's another $100. And so we had done 11 or 12 applications from Michigan, some in the Northeast, mostly are in the Virginia, DC, Maryland area. And a friend of mine said, are you gonna send it into Yale and Harvard? Like, you have the grades and the score. And I was like, why don't we just light $100 on fire? That seems like it would be a better use of that money. And so so like, that's what I mean about like, I expanded what was possible, but not all the way, right? Like more, but no, not up there. And so the friend actually ended up sending in the application for me for both of those schools, paid the $100 for each of them. And I got early acceptance to Georgetown, thought I was set to go there. As soon as I got back to England from that Christmas break, because I got the Georgetown letter at home in West Virginia, back to England, there was a letter from Columbia waiting for me. And then I thought I was going there. So I had my housing, my financial aid, everything was all set. And then in May, I got a call from the Dean of Admissions, Megan Barnett at Yale, letting me know I got in there. And so everything had to change at the last minute because, Yale was the number one law school in the country, which was so wild. I've never gotten to tell that story in like its fullness like that, except in Dirt. And that's such an example that honestly keeps me up at night, Carol, of like, I was not willing to bet on myself and everything I would have missed out on if, God hadn't sent somebody to intervene. Wow. And it is a reminder that if we're not willing to bet on ourselves, there's not always going to be somebody else to step in. And you can forfeit what was meant for you. You can forfeit the opportunity if you use your free will and say, nope, not, enough times that I think that opportunity can miss you.
Well, for my listeners today, Mary keeps referencing her first book, which is simply titled Dirt. And it tells her story of growing up in the hills of West Virginia and how she came to believe in herself, how she came to believe that things could change in the life of a little girl who was raised in a single wide in dirt. Well, I think that you'll agree with me that Mary Marantz's story is nothing short of miraculous. And I happen to love how her dad really believed in her and wanted more for her than he had ever had in his life, and how Mary ran with that because one person believed in her. Mary's life is where it is today. I wanted to tell you that just a couple weeks ago, I went to a very small town in Pennsylvania, just a very poor little village in the middle of nowhere. And I did a women's event for nearly 150 women. We packed out that little Baptist church. And how did I get there? How was the Lord good enough to open that door? Well, it was because one woman said, I'm going to do this for my community. I'm going to make a difference where I live. So one woman single-handedly planned the event, financially helped the event, and invited women to come. You know what? Just like Mary's story is filled with the power of change, the Lord has put us here on planet Earth today to make a change. And if you would like to give a gift to your community, I'd love to come and speak to them. I do Mother's Day events, I do Christmas events, brunches, full-blown women's conferences, retreats, a luncheon. I speak at Sunday morning church services. Whatever your need is, we can make it work. We are determined to change the world under our watch, to convince the women who are alive today that you can have hope because of Jesus. Hope isn't found in our circumstances. Joy is not found in our marital relationship. Peace isn't found because our children are all serving the Lord. Hope, joy, and peace all come from one place. They all come from a relationship with Jesus Christ. So if you'd like to find more about having me come and speak at an event in your neighborhood, in your neck of the woods, you can find all the details at carolmcleodministries.com. I'd be so honored to join you in your neighborhood. And now let's get back to my conversation with the one and only Mary Marantz. So now, Mary, you are a published author, just like one of your heroines, Pearl S. Buck. And your third book has recently come out. The title of it is Underestimated. Now, that's a profound title. So, Mary, one of the things I do is I help authors come up with titles that fit their work. I love titles. And this is a great title, Underestimated. So when I say the word underestimated, what was underestimated in your life, in your heart?
Yeah. So when the idea first hit me, and there's a great part in Liz Gilbert's Big Magic where she kind of personifies ideas as like walking around in the world, tapping people on the shoulder, asking to enter into a handshake agreement in order to get made. And if they tap you a few times and you don't pay attention, they will move on to someone else. You can forfeit the idea. And so when this idea first picked me, I was just completely blown away. Carol, I was blown away that this title had not been taken in such a dramatic way that it couldn't be used again. There are some books that have the title, but they're very like specific focus. Like one's for autism, for example. And so I couldn't believe the title was available. I couldn't believe that nobody had really done this idea before, this kind of like, chapter by chapter, all the different faces of fear. If you think of fear like a prism, we're used to looking at the one that faces us the most. And then we call friends who are not good friends two-faced. Well, fear's like 14-faced. 14 chapters at least. It's way more than that. We go through some other kinds of fears in the chapters. But honestly, Carol, when the idea first picked me and I was like, yeah, it had like kind of like underestimate me. That'll be fun sort of energy, which is like a t-shirt on Etsy that I now own.
I'm sure you do.
I 100% thought it was going to be a book 100% about when other people do this to us. If you really want me to be honest. I have this very gentle voice, very quiet, low, soft-spoken voice. I am an introvert. I am a very empathetic person. There's that whole like when people mistake our kindness for weakness kind of vibe. And so there is just something about me that every time I'm in like one of those cocktail hour networking situations where everybody's trying to size up who's important in the room and the cool kids somehow seem to always find each other, I'm the one off in the corner being with one other person being like, so tell me about your childhood. I like the deep conversations. I am allergic to surface. And so I just feel like I've spent most of my life with people initially really underestimating me, uninviting me, overlooking me, not giving me an invite to the table. And I wrote a post recently that was like, don't sit me at the cool kids table. The conversations are all the same. Like there's just this jockeying for position. You've rubbed the elbow patches clean off, trying to rub elbows with one another. They're looking over each other's shoulders at the next important person coming along. Instead, put me in the corner, plant me like a wallflower. I promise you some of the most interesting people are there.
Yes.
So I sat down to write it. And I know you know this, writing 20 books. Books have opinions. They have so many opinions about what they want to be. And the book said to me, it's going to be 20% that, because that's the thing. That's a real thing. We need to deal with that. But it's going to be 80% when you do it to yourself. And so on the cover, it says, because the person counting you out the most just might be you.
Yes. And Mary, we do that to ourselves, whether we're raised in the hills of West Virginia or on the sidewalks of New York City. We all do that to ourselves. So self-talk, what's in your heart about yourself is one of the most important issues of life, I believe. So Mary, how can we overcome our tendency, especially as women, I believe, how can we overcome this tendency to underestimate our calling, our gifts, our potential? How do we? Come on, coach me. Tell me how to do it, little sister. Tell me.
Well, first of all, I have to ask: were you raised in New York? Are you a New Yorker?
No, I was raised in New York State, but in the upstate, in the dairy farmland, in an idyllic little Norman Rockwellian village by parents who adored me, who loved the Lord. Let me tell you, Mary, if any person on the face of the planet had that, I'm going to cry, that ideal, wonderful, unconditional, loving childhood, it was this girl. It was me. Yeah.
That is incredible. That's so incredible.
We were not rich, Mary. We were not wealthy. We were lower middle class, but we had everything we needed.
Wow. What a legacy, and what, that idea of standing on like the shoulders of giants. So much of this book, there's a tiny little piece. I'm just going to read super like a paragraph.
Oh, please do.
That I think kind of really resonates with this conversation we're having here. And that is, it's kind of talking about, for some of the very first sentence in the entire book is, for some of us, it just takes a little longer. And in a very full circle moment, it comes back around. I'm talking very slow so that I can.
So that you can.
There we go. I got it.
Good. Okay.
I got it. Okay. It says, like I said, sometimes, okay, all the time, we're our own worst enemies. And yet we forget that we don't all start at the same starting line in life. Day by day, some of us are out here unraveling a lifetime of limiting beliefs turned lead weights tied up around our ankles. Forgive us if we get tripped up. We're doing the work. It's just that our work involves healing decades-old traumas, moving away from wild-eyed scarcity to finally believing once and for all we've stumbled our way into safety. It's sorting through the generations-deep tangle of beliefs about what we are capable of and what happens to a person when they finally get more. Forgive us if it takes a little longer. It's just that our whole life we've believed the lie that more would one day be our downfall. So little by little, day by day, we are learning to trust ourselves, and in the process, we're changing patterns that will in turn change our family trees. So yeah, that's going to take a while. But make no mistake about it, we're not weak, we're not fragile, we're not delicate. We're out here doing the heavy lifting of breaking generational chains. So it's okay if it takes us a little longer. Deep breath here. Find your footing. A different sort of climb starts now.
Wow.
So I think it's really beautiful that your parents set you up where you didn't have necessarily that step to do first. And what you were able to do for your family and friends and passing that on. And I get really interested in, like, what was the break in the family tree? Was it their parents to them? Where was it that somebody said in your family tree, this ends with me? Or does it just go all the way back to Scotland,
No.
So yeah, that's interesting.
It is an interesting point. And I don't know. I'd have to do a little bit of research to see where the break in the family tree was. But I do think the weakness, Mary, in my home as opposed to your home was the call to perfectionism. I remember distinctly the day my mom said to me, can still hear her saying to me, Carol, if you can't do it, then nobody can do it. To build this resource in me of bravery and courage. So, all of our childhoods, all of our growing up years have strengths and weaknesses.
That's right.
You had Goldie, my goodness. Boy, does that speak to me as a grandmother that she loved you and believed in you. And now you're a published author. This is your third book. So you've got Dirt, and tell us the name of your second book, Mary.
Slow growth equals strong roots.
Slow growth equals strong roots.
That's right.
And, not only is that a secular principle, it's also a biblical principle as well.
Right.
That the slower you grow, the deeper your roots can go.
Yeah.
And now your third book, Underestimated. And if anybody had the call to write this book, it's you. And I love how you said this title chose you, Mary.
Yeah.
That's a picture I'm going to be pondering for a very long time. But tell us, Mary, what does your life look like today?
Yeah. So, I mean, I feel like I don't want to take the easy way out. I want to kind of bounce back to your question when you said, teach us, coach us a little bit here.
Okay.
For people who feel like, I do keep doing this to myself. I keep underestimating myself. I keep pushing the boulder all the way up to the top of the mountain. And at the very last second, Carol, there's a part I think you'd appreciate. It says, we push it all the way up to the top. We can almost taste the rarefied air. There's a little sign in the ground that says, arrived and you are here to tell us how close we came this time. And then, like Wile E. Coyote about to get his comeuppance, we freeze when we make eye contact with everybody watching at home. And for just 1 minute suspended in time, we are the kind of people who defy gravity. And then we let playing small push us right back over the edge. We blink, we lose our grip, we lose our way. And the boulder rolls all the way back down the mountain. And so chapter 3 is where the real kind of like we're going to roll up our sleeves and do some work. So chapter 1 is the problem. Chapter 2 is like, let me tell you a little bit about fear. And then chapter 3 is self-sabotage, is a shot glass. And it's talking about this idea of, like, I saw this post once on a very cheesy success account that I follow. But this was a good post. It said, if you think you have the capacity of a shot glass, then every time you get a little bit more than that, because remember, some of us have believed more would be our downfall our whole lives, then you will subconsciously shrink yourself back down until you fit into the tiny containers you believe you belong in. And it said you have to expand your capacity.
Yeah.
Expand it until it's an infinity pool. And it's like, of course you would call it an infinity pool on an account like that. But I had never seen a clear explanation of self-sabotage. And I had 2 days later, Dr. Allison Cook was on my podcast, who, if you two don't know each other, you super should. She's phenomenal. And she had a book at the time coming out called The Best of You. She's now released another book since then called I Shouldn't Feel This Way. But in The Best of You, I said, how do we stop doing this if we don't even know we're doing it most of the time, if it is subconscious? And so we pulled up this passage from her book that said, if you didn't grow up with a sense of safety, if you felt this instability and this chaos in the home, it can flip a survival mode switch that it's very hard to turn back off. And you will continue to return to chaos because it feels familiar. And she said, you have to reparent yourself essentially as a grown-up. You have to reteach yourself a sense of safety. And you do that by setting small but important commitments to yourself and then actually keeping them. So small, they're manageable, important, they matter to you, and then you actually keep them. And she said, as you do that, as you honor commitments to yourself, Mary, both big and small, and she looked at me right through the lens like we're looking at each other. She said, you're teaching yourself there is a grown-up in the room who can be trusted. That grown-up is you. And I just burst into tears on the spot because so many of us have something in our story that has told us it's not safe to trust anyone, including ourselves. And so we find all of these ways to bow out, to use fear to bow out of moving forward on the good work that has been prepared for us in advance. Not even because necessarily of a big T trust problem, where our ultimate trust and hope reside with God and who we believe He is, but a little T trust problem. We don't trust ourselves to steward what He's given us well. We think we'll make it about ourselves. We'll be prideful. We'll mismanage it. Someone else would be more qualified, whatever it is. And so we bow out believing God doesn't really need us. Someone else can do the work. He'll work through them.
So, Mary, what do you believe about small things now? Have you changed your perception of small things?
Yes, I have. I talk in the book about I've always been an all or nothing person. All in, we're doing this, or just it drops to nothing. And it's always really bothered me, Carol, that true excellence and excellence alone is not enough. That excellence doesn't always win the way I think it should. That there are oftentimes people who are far more watered down, have far less substance, far less integrity even, who win in this world because they keep showing up, boom, boom, every day. They're not questioning themselves and taking themselves out at every turn. It's the people who actually worry about whether what they're putting out in the world is good, who then overthink it so much that they hold themselves back. Meanwhile, these people are like, who cares? Show up again. And that consistency compounds over time. These small shifts, these small things, your life will not be changed. John Maxwell said, until you change something you do every day. Wow. And so every single day we show up and we become the person who can one day stand in this goal. That is cause for celebration. And in doing that, it is more about the becoming than the achieving.
Yes.
Yeah.
So our challenge, Mary's challenge and my challenge to the listeners today is to start small. Yeah. What can you do today that will take you one step closer to the you that you want to be? Mary, often I ask my guests these back-to-back questions, and I ask one without telling them what the next one is going to be, but I'm going to do it differently. Often I say to them, tell me 3 adjectives that describe yourself. And after they've done that, then I say, but what 3 adjectives would you like to describe yourself? Do you wish described yourself? Yeah. And the way any of us change anything is one day at a time, one decision at a time, one thought at a time. So the small matters. It matters very, very much. It's no small thing to be faithful in small things in life.
Right.
So, Mary, before we go, do tell us what your life looks like today. Where do you live? What tell us what makes you happy, what you're enjoying.
Yeah.
Give us a little peek into your life.
Well, we'll just start with this. I am living the life that little Mary would be like jumping up and down, like waving her arms, like running around the house, like Home Alone style, because there is not a dream that I had when I knew her, when I was little Mary. There's not a dream I had then that I don't hold right now. Now, as you go, you're constantly adding to the list. So I for sure have dreams I haven't seen come true yet. But like being a child of the 80s, a lot of our good life was informed by being raised by the babysitter that was the TV. And so a lot of the picture, I wanted to live in Connecticut because that's where they lived in Who's the Boss. And I wanted to have golden retrievers because that's what they had on Full House, and I wanted to be an author. And we live in an 1880s fixer upper by the sea on the water in Connecticut. I mean, who gets that for their first house? We were able to get it in 2008. It had been in foreclosure. We've been in it for 15 plus years. Gosh, 17 years, I guess we're coming up on. Well, we bought in 2009, so 16 years. It's just about now getting done. It was a mess, but we live on the water, the Long Island Sound in Connecticut. I have 2 golden retrievers named Goodspeed and Atticus. I'm an author. I thought I would never get married because I thought if what I'd seen my parents, separate and eventually divorce, that if that was what marriage was, then forget it. And I have an incredibly redeeming, beautiful marriage with my husband, Justin. I get to do podcasts and talk to incredible people like you. Like I have my podcast and I get to go on podcasts. I will literally sit in my office, Carol, and I can point to 100 things that are dreams come true that I did have, and then dreams that I didn't even dare to dream, that never even crossed my mind. So in that sense, I am living just a pinch me moment every day of my life. And, then there's like the both ends, right? The tension of like the hard with the beautiful and the waiting with the right now. So, and I think there is just like always this perpetual and then we're always moving the target on what's next if we're growing and we're doing things that scare us. So what you said to me, I don't even know if we were recording yet. I hope we were, maybe we weren't, of this idea of like, you have to fall in love with the journey because if you're constantly trying to get to an arrival point, it's always going to be right beyond our fingertips. So it is the tension in the both end of little Mary would be pumped and grown up Mary still has some stuff she wants to go do.
Oh, well, just know that I am cheering for grown-up Mary.
Thank you.
I love your story. I love the way you've processed it. I love the beautiful work that God has done in your heart, Mary, that you've allowed him to do. So do you have a certain scripture verse that's just meant a lot to you? Maybe even over the last year as you've been writing this book and preparing it for publication?
Yeah. One that has been a repeating theme in my life, especially since I started writing books, is just the passage that is the parable of the talents. And it's come up in my life a few different ways, depending on the book I was writing. So, for example, when I was writing Dirt, I was doing a podcast episode with Ian Morgan Cron, and he said to me, I think the first half of our lives is the parable of the talents. We're just trying to make a profit with the gifts we've been given. But the second half is the parable of the prodigal son. We're all just trying to find our way back home. And that was yet another moment when I just burst into tears on my own podcast.
Yeah.
And so that really lined up well with this message of Dirt, of going back to where you started, going back home and making peace with your past. And then I'm writing Slow Growth, and it really occurred to me, which is about giving up achieving for your worth, trying to, not trying to gold star your way into belonging anymore. And what really occurred to me in the parable of the talents that time was that we never see it being the one with 5 went and made $1 billion, or the one with 2 went and made 100,000. It was 5 became 10, 2 became 4, right? It was 1 to 1. For every 2 that you had, you made 2. For every 5 that you had, you made 5. So it kind of got to me to the idea of like, where did we get this idea that it was only successful if it had multiple commas, or that it was about the quantity? It's more about using what you've been given to go create one more like that. As an author, we go create another author. As a person with words, we write the book that would help even one person, even though we hope that, of course, at doing this as a profession, that it will sell more. And so that really spoke to me about like, it's not about how many, it's about the faithfulness with one. And just multiplying. This time with Underestimated, what's really stood out to me is that when they are given the talents, the one who gave them does not stick around. They actually go away for a while. They do not leave a step-by-step blueprint instruction. They do not pop in to go, now you have permission. They're not in the next room so that somebody can go, wait, did I hear you right? And so what that says to me is that we've been given gifts, we've been given talent. So many of us will say, well, I'm just going to pray on it a little longer. even, which is not bad. I'm not criticizing that, unless God's like, I don't know what to tell you. I've been pretty clear. Like I've given you the talent. I'm going over here now because I want to see what you do with it. And we see that third person with the talent get so worried about little t trust that they're going to mess it up, that they bury the talent. They hide it. And if you play that story out to completion, what ends up happening is that they forfeit the opportunity. It's taken away. So that to me says there's somebody listening right now, and you've been waiting for the perfect instruction. You've been waiting to make sure you heard God right, which is, again, not always bad unless you're using it as a delaying tactic. You have been waiting to, check in and make sure you have permission. You've been worried that you'll mess it up and get it wrong. And you were never asked to be perfect when you showed up. You were just asked to be faithful.
Yes.
And so when we bury that talent, when we hide that talent, we risk forfeiting the good work that has been prepared for us in advance. Oliver Wendell Holmes said, most of us will go to our graves with our music still inside us unplayed. And that should scare us, right? Because we've been given this gift, this talent to get out into the world, and hiding it is not serving anyone.
Oh, amen, Mary. Amen. And so to our listeners today, start singing. Sing the song that you were given to sing before the beginning of time. You might feel like it's off pitch, like you're not sure what the rhythm
I'm singing
is.
It is. I promise you that. words he gave me, not song.
Yeah. Oh, but sing your heart out to the one who made you, because there's a world waiting to hear your unique song. Mary, thank you for singing to us today. You may not think you sing, but sister, you have sung a beautiful anthem over our lives today. And so before you go, will you pray for my listeners?
Yeah, I would love that. I would love that so much.
Thank you.
God, I just thank you for every single woman listening. I thank you for the work that Carol is doing to bring these significant women, both the ones listening and the ones that come on to share their stories, to sit across from one incredible, significant woman, to show and lead by example of what can happen when we are not afraid of stepping into the places we're being called, when we don't worry that we've heard you wrong, when we don't worry that we're not the ones, when we don't worry that there's something in our story that always already disqualifies us. God, we know that you, one of the first forward-facing character traits of you we ever learn about is that of creator. And that us being made in your image, we are inherently creative in the sense that we were made to put good things into the world and call them good. And so it should not surprise us that the opposite of that, the enemy of that, this father of lies, this enemy of our soul, this fear that just hates the idea and the day that we might go make good on the work you have for us, that the opposite of your power, which is creative power, would be the absence of that creativity. We should not be shocked when we find out that fear is actually really boring in his tactics and his attempts. And we see that going back thousands of years all the way to the beginning of the Bible. There's just not a lot in his back pocket that he can use to take us out, because the fact of the matter is he knows, like we know, like you know, that the battle has already been won.
Yes.
And so, God, I just pray that the woman listening would really start to develop almost like she'd get bored with fear. She would get bored with the same scripts coming out of her mouth, the same excuses that keep delaying the dream. She would get bored with ignoring that bump in her spirit that says, no, really, when are you going to get moving on the work I've given you? That she would stop giving and attributing to fear an integrity and a trustworthiness and a belief that it tells the truth that it does not have. And that she would start to replace fear's boring lies with your truth.
Yes,
and she would know that for all of us, we're never asking her to show up perfectly. We're just asking her to show up because another year goes by, the clock goes on ticking, and this world is worse for her absence. This work you're asking her to do is about the people it will help for sure. But mostly it's about the work you want to do in her. And that's the real point, that we get to sit in unqualified awe, that we get to co-create with the creator of the universe. And let us not waste a single second of that. Let us not go to our grave with the music still inside us, unplayed. Give her the kind of courage that can only come from you, God. Give her the kind of certainty that there is a plan and a hope for her future. Give her the understanding that it would not be in her if you were not asking her to use it. Give her courage and peace and comfort and just enough awareness of fear to finally be fed up with it. And let us do everything we do to offer it right back to you. Give every gift we've been given to give it right back to you so we can stand before you, as Irma Bombeck said, and said, I don't have a single talent left to give. I used everything you gave me. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Mary, thank you. You are a delight.
Oh, same. Same. I want to see photos of little Carol now.
Okay. Well, didn't you just fall in love with Mary Marantz? Isn't her story just so heart-touching and so significant? I just wanted to scoop her up in my arms when she was a little girl and let her know how loved she was and how special she was. I love how Mary's story reminds all of us that being faithful in the small things is a very big thing to God our Father. Well, maybe you have found yourself in a small place today. Maybe you feel unseen, unloved. Maybe you feel like nobody believes in you. Maybe your steps feel incredibly small and you wonder if anything about your life actually matters. Let me encourage you. God sees you. God is working. He will never waste your faithfulness. So keep on, my sister. Keep on serving the Lord with your whole heart. Before we go, I want to share a scripture with you. Ephesians 2:10. For we are God's workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works, which God prepared beforehand that we should walk in them. You are handcrafted by God for an extraordinary purpose, and even your smallest acts of obedience are part of His beautiful plan. Don't ever underestimate what the Lord is able to do with your life, with your loaves and fishes, with your small acts of loving kindness. Well, if you were encouraged today, would you leave a rating and review on the platform on which you are listening to the Significant Women podcast with Carol McLeod? And as always, you can find a lot more encouragement at carolmcleodministries.com. And don't forget, we have an app for your smartphone. Just search for it in the App Store. Thank you for listening. I know you could listen to so many different podcasts, and I'm honored that you would listen to this one. And hopefully, I will see you next week on the Significant Women podcast with Carol McLeod.